As the 2015 legislative session gets underway, we can already guess one issue that will come up a lot. We have discussed it this evening already too. It's education. The debates over Common Core, standardized tests, and teacher evaluations are all still ongoing. And with the State Education Commissioner now departed, all sides are digging in. Joining me from the Capitol to talk about all of this is the chair of the Senate Education Committee, Senator John Flanagan of Long Island. You are very popular this year, sir. Welcome back to Capitol Tonight.
Well, let's see, that could be very fleeting, but thank you, Liz. Happy New Year to you.
Yeah, and to you. I don't think it's going to be fleeting. If you're not popular, you're certainly going to be prevalent. I mean, this is really the A1 issue that everybody is discussing and has been discussing almost since, I think, before the governor was reelected. He made clear with his comments about breaking the, quote, public monopoly of public education and the teachers union that he is really interested in a complete overhaul. The question is, will the legislature meet him even halfway?
Well, certainly we have every intention of working with him. We've proven we can do that in the past, but you know, a lot of it is going to depend on what the governor says in the state of the state, which is respectfully adjourned for the time being out of respect to his family. And so what he puts in that and then what he puts in the budget is going to be very telling, and we're of course going to be proactive in our own ways, but we will be reactionary to what he puts out there. If it's draconian, if it's not in the best interest of students, then certainly we're not going to meet him even halfway. But if it's good for kids all across the state, if it works for school districts, superintendents, administrators, school boards, and equally as important, parents, then you know, I'm confident that we can work very closely with the governor, but also with all the interested parties. This is a three-legged chair. The governor can certainly propose things, but the Assembly plays a role, and I believe the Senate plays a critical role regardless of the outcome. Okay,
so what does that mean, draconian? I mean, what might he propose, in your opinion, that would be too draconian for the legislature to swallow?
It would be, I think it would be unfair of me to a degree to anticipate or characterize what the governor may do. He's a very competent, talented individual on his own. He's got good staff around him. So do I think they're going to look at things like teacher evaluations? Yes. Do I think they're going to look at tenure and other issues like that? Yes. Teacher quality, recruitment, retention. I saw some comments about protecting poor teachers in the classroom. Nobody has an interest in that, but how you define that and what you do about it, and not only in terms of detail, but the timeliness of it, will have a significant effect. Look, in a very simplistic way, we have 7 new members, all of whom are going to have strong opinions, just having come off elections, and we need to be guided by what they think to an extent. Certainly, Senator Skelos is going to be outspoken on a lot of different components of this debate, but you know, my sense is we have to properly fund education because it is New York State's #1 priority, and it should be. And the way we can prove that is by putting money there. And then on top of that, what does it mean for students? You know, most of my districts are high performing, but they're not all perfect. But we have districts across the state of New York where graduation rates are abysmal. College and career readiness it's atrocious in some areas, and we have to figure ways to ameliorate those situations, get rid of some of those problems, and sort of mimic what happens in the successful district. Yeah,
the governor already sort of signaled where he's going, or at least sort of the broad outlines of his thinking, with the letter that went to the State Education Commissioner, now departed, so the acting State Education Commissioner, and the Board of Regents Chancellor, Merrill Tisch. I mean, that letter was written by a top aide, but it was certainly obviously coming from the governor. And he talked about a lot of things. This was even before he rejected his own safety net legislation, right? So that had to do with the protection of teachers who were poor performing or low performing, let's say, in connection with the Common Core and the test results there. So we know where his thinking is, and we know particularly that he's very interested in charter schools. Now, the Senate Republicans got a lot of money from pro-charter school interests, but I remember an interview that you gave not too terribly long ago where you said you didn't think that the raising of the cap or even the eradication of the cap was a top priority because we weren't near the cap yet. I don't think that those donors believe that that's the case.
I would say a couple of different things. First of all, the charter school piece is important, and a lot of what happened last year, the catalyst for that was actions taken by the mayor. There was much less discussion about where charter schools were and where they were going prior to some of the things that the mayor did. So he proved to be an impetus for a lot of the changes that came about. Now, in relation to it being a top priority, I would differentiate and since I said it, I can differentiate my own words. My only distinction would be that if you're looking at the city of New York, they're closer to the cap.
True.
But I also think it's fair to say if you look at how charter schools have been advanced and the ones that have been granted permission or the authority to exist, it hasn't been like there's been 100 of them in a given year. It's a pretty time-consuming process. So, but that's not, I think that's going to be one part of it. As it relates to teachers in particular, nothing more important than a good teacher in front of the classroom. Now, how do you recruit them? How do you retain them? And while the governor's own bill, as you described it, was described as a safety net for teachers, I think the backdrop is equally as important to recall that one of the primary reasons that we were doing that was because of the implementation of Common Core and how it unfolded. So it wasn't just a gratuitous effort to quote unquote protect teachers or provide a safety net. It was a recognition of problems that had existed. Now I want to go quickly to the letter that you referenced. There's no question that that letter was chock full of everything. I mean, there are a few things that were left out, like 853s and special acts and the whole area of special education. But, you know, if you look at a 3-page letter from the Director of State Operations, I was thinking about how the Commissioner and the Chancellor would respond, and obviously Commissioner King is now down in Washington.
With a 20-page letter, I think.
Yeah, it's almost 21 pages.
Yeah.
And I recall thinking, all right, well, if they answer in 5 pages, they're going to get criticized. If they answer in 20 pages, they're going to get criticized because it's so lengthy. But I have to say, I have already started working with our staff on reviewing the response from State Ed, which I think was extraordinarily detailed and had a lot of components in there that I want to learn more about, some of the things that they're doing. And, you know, when you talk about problems that exist in a place like East Ramapo, then you throw in undocumented minors, then you throw in tenure, then you throw in recruitment and retention, and all those aspects. And there wasn't even really a hearty discussion about funding, you know, the elimination of the GEA and things like that. So as much as was in there, I could make a fair argument that probably the most compelling thing that we need to talk about is what are we going to do about funding in 2015.
Okay.
All 7 of my new colleagues believe that the GEA is an absolute #1 priority.
Yep,
for
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that for the coming year and for the GOP conference all told. I mean, the other thing is, and just to sort of throw one more, you know, log on top of the fire here, this all takes place against the backdrop of the election that we just saw, right? And so NYSET didn't endorse the governor in 2010, didn't endorse the governor this time around, is under new leadership. I mean, how much of that political retribution, payback, bad blood, whatever you want to call it, is going to come into play here, plus the relationship between the New York City mayor who tried to really oust your conference, have the Democrats take over, and he failed.
Yeah, the mayor stepped into a fray that, frankly, I don't think he should have, but he made a choice, and I'm gratified to be able to look at you right now and say that we have 7 new members in our conference and we have a clear majority. So the voters obviously paid attention to what we were offering and embraced it, certainly for the next 2 years, and that's something we need to focus on. Now, going back, whatever the proposals are, whatever was done in the election, people will understand some short-term contention, but they want results. They want to know, what are we doing? And at some point they're going to say, I don't care about what your friction or your tensions are. Get over it and get stuff done.
Right.
Now, do I think people made poor choices in the fall season, in the campaign season? Yes. And let me be very clear. I believe they made poor choices because they were castigating candidates and incumbents and not telling the truth about people's records. I believe I have an outspoken advocate for public education, and I saw what a lot of my colleagues went through during a campaign season. But prospectively, again, what are we doing to improve the quality of teaching? How are we dealing with African American males and Hispanic males that graduate at much significantly lower rates than many of their counterparts? That's a failure all across the state. It may not affect my community directly, but it certainly affects it indirectly, and it affects all of us. So the level of the dialogue and the content of that debate is going to be extraordinarily important. Are there hard feelings? Of course there are.
Yeah.
That's human nature, but that should not dissuade us from meeting our fundamental obligations and working in some cohesive type way. Do I think it's going to be an aggressive session? I don't think there's any question about that. And as you stated right from the get-go, education is going to be at the forefront of the state of the state, the budget, probably the fiscal hearings as well. So
yeah.
we're in for a quite an event this year.
Okay, before I let you go, I do want to ask you this then. You
Sure.
talked about people's records being skewed or lied about or misrepresented during the campaign.
Yes.
You know, the shorthand during the campaign was Senate Republicans pro-charter, and if you happen to be, you know, against charter schools, pro-hedge fund, pro-rich people who support charters, right? And then the Democrats were allied with NYSET. But actually, it was a lot more complex than that. There were Republican candidates, albeit not in highly competitive races, but who were endorsed by NYSET. So the question is, will those charter school, was this whole thing overblown? Do those charter school proponents who think now that they need to get results out of the Senate Republicans, is it not that simple of a request?
I would make a very strong distinction. The Senate is pro-education. What shape it comes in or what form it comes in or the substance of it, we are and have always been pro-education. So we're not affiliated with one side versus the other. I've worked, in the course of my career, I've worked with teachers, hundreds of teachers, have been through thousands of hours of meetings at this point. And am I going to work with teachers? Yes. Am I going to work with my local teachers? Sure. But to suggest that somehow, you know, we're purely affiliated with one element or one component versus another, I don't agree with that. People are going to make comments the way they want, but you're right. A number of our colleagues, not a huge amount, but a number of our colleagues were endorsed by NYSET. So look, again, what is said, how it's said, and under what circumstances, and is going to be extremely important. And nobody has a better bully pulpit than the governor. So let me just go back quickly to the letter and the whole discussion. There are a lot of things that they ask questions about that they could have done already. We've been outspoken on things like distance learning and regional high schools. So what the governor was inquiring about, you know, not only has the department sent bills over, but the Senate has acted on a number of these proposals. So there is nothing preventing the governor from advancing rigorous proposals for our independent review. I would only caution that to lard up the budget with policy proposals, I think is going to be a little bit problematic. Send over governmental bills, send over departmental bills. That's probably a cleaner, smoother, more efficient way to run the process.
Well, Senator, we will see when the first salvo, well, the first salvo of 2015, when you put that letter aside since it came out in 2014, when that first salvo comes, it will be in the State of the State, followed quickly by the budget within the same week, and then we will speak again. I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Good talking to you.